This week, we've seen brutal backstabs, future forewarnings, and fourth wall fractures. Let's dive right into what's on the pull list. This week, we're going to kick things off with Absolute Superman number 20, written by Jason Aaron with artwork by Rafa Sandoval. This was another knock 'em out, drag 'em out kind of issue that has really built some big time excitement for Absolute Superman in a book that was previously known as a slow burn kind of series. No, it's anything but that very recently here, and it's really been on the heels of the introduction of a couple different characters. One being the Absolute Hawkman, the other being the Absolute version of Shazam, and even Steel at this point. And it's really about all of those characters coming together in this issue and continuing their battle that we saw from the previous issue. And it's totally worth it. I love the interaction, the action that Rafa Sandoval brings to the look of this book. But I think what really drives this issue home, even maybe more effectively than the previous issue, was Jason Aaron and his writing for the character of Absolute Hawkman. This is a very interesting character. He is kind of working for the bad guys, but it's kind of in a reluctant way a little bit. He's doing things, I think he's kind of been broken by this absolute world, really, is what it essentially boils down to. He's kind of like saying, hey, you got to get a little dirty to do the best amount of good that you possibly can in this broken world. And Superman doesn't see it that way, but you also, from that same viewpoint, see that, his view is changing in viewing Superman and his approach to all this kind of stuff. Really great issue, really fun series here. And again, I think that it's finding a really good balance recently, and it's really, really working out. All right, sticking around in the Absolute universe, let's talk Absolute Wonder Woman number 21, written by Kelly Thompson with artwork this time by Dylan Snook. So let's go ahead and start with that. We have a fill-in artist for this issue. Hayden Sherman's taken the issue off, and previously we've had artists like Mateus De Luis take over. A very different artistic approach here. Dylan Snook's art is very reminiscent to that of Hayden Sherman's. I feel like stylistically, we're really working in the same wheelhouse here. And for that reason, I think it's very effective. I like what they're doing here. So this issue is kind of all about the ramifications of Wonder Woman's escape from the plight that she had been put in previously. She's been drawn back into hell, and now she's trying to investigate. This was her home. This is where she grew up. She's now looking for her mother. She can't find her mother, and it's the unlikeliest source to kind of show where her mother may have been or where she was actually taken. Really interesting look at the character here. I really like what they're doing, and they're also toying with the other characters. We also know that the character of Barbara, who is traditionally the Cheetah character in our normal DC universe, well, now she's being held prisoner with the Cheetah that was the absolute version. And you know that there's going to be some back and forth play there. They're building up something to kind of build to the expectation of what we could see coming down the pipeline for this character, even though she buddied up with Diana in this universe. Maybe they're still set to be villains later on. Who knows? It's kind of interesting, though. This is a lighter issue here. It's a building kind of issue here. We're not getting the payoff quite as of yet, but it does leave you on a cliffhanger that gets me really excited to see what's going to be happening in this next issue. Next up, we have Captain America number 12, written by Chip Zdarsky with artwork by Valerio Schiti. I thought maybe my time with Captain America might have been over in the last issue, but I got pulled back in a little bit, and I'm more glad that I did than not. So we know that Captain America was previously in Latveria. He was working with the different factions at different times for the reoccupation of the country. But Red Hulk totally threw that, for a loop. And now Captain America is kind of in limbo. He's in a coma. He's on the edge of death. There's nothing more that the doctors can actually do for him. But in death, he is now in purgatory, hell, with one Victor Von Doom. And what are they trying to do? Well, time will tell on that. I don't want to spoil it for you, but what I can say is that it gets me more excited than almost any previous issue of Captain America has in the past year. That's saying something, right? This is an issue I think this is going to be something that builds towards what Chip is trying to do here. This is definitely something it has to have something that is going to play into Avengers Armageddon right now, which was sneaky good as well, too. So maybe we're starting to get a little bit of momentum here in Chip's corner of the Marvel Universe. That gets me excited. I like that. Having Valerio Schiti on artwork, too, really, really, really makes a difference here. If there could be some consistency there and have Valerio doing the artwork over and over and over, even if it means, doling out a couple issues, maybe a little bit longer than normal, that would be really cool. I really like this. Makes me curious though. This feels very reminiscent to something that Chip Zdarsky did previously, sending Daredevil to hell to fight the Beast. So hopefully they have a new spin on that kind of trope that they're dealing with. Time will tell on that one, but I think this issue is worth it. All right, let's talk Conan the Barbarian, number 32, written by Jim Zub with artwork by Doug Braithwaite. This was a standalone issue, but that's not to say that it doesn't actually play into the greater mythology that we've been dealing with in the pages of Conan. So I like that it has references to other things that we've already seen. Particularly, the issue really does jump off from the heels of our Son of the Tooth arc, right? Conan is still, he's beaten down, he's battered, he's bruised, he's healing. And now he's on this mission that he's set forth on. He is basically, he has someone that comes to him and says, I need one person and one person only to accompany me on this journey, keep me safe, kind of act as my bodyguard, and I'll pay you upon the completion. Well, to get paid means to pay the people that have basically kept him alive after the beating he just got. So he reluctantly agrees, goes out with them. So it's a one and done adventure, and I like that for it. Also, Doug Braithwaite, at this point, he's kind of just like the series regular on this book, man. Like when I close my eyes and think of the Jim Zub era of Conan, it's now become his artwork that I think of when I'm thinking of what Conan looks like and feels like. Really cool, really great artwork here. He gets to play with a lot of cool things in this issue too, because there is action set pieces, but it also deals with the supernatural, the mythological aspects of Conan here. And I love when they get to do those kind of things, when they get to toy with all that kind of stuff, because you think of Conan the Barbarian, you think it's just action, but no, there's always like this Lovecraftian horror aspect that gets kind of like interwoven into the mysteries of this book. And that's what this issue does in a really, really perfect way. If you're looking for an on ramp to get into Conan, issue number 32 might be the best one to check out. Next up, we have The Flash number 34, written by Ryan North with artwork by Gavin Guidry. So Wally West is continuing to try to understand his flashes of intuition, I believe is what he calls them, maybe, right? He's starting to be able to kind of like see the future and like start to see the near future events that are going to take place through the Speed Force, really. And he's working with Mr. Terrific to try to hone in and figure out, how do I actually trigger this? It's kind of just happening unconsciously right now, but how do I look into a way to actually trigger it at any time that I want to? And he's kind of working out that muscle memory and trying to figure out how he can do that. And this is kind of like a one and done issue in itself as well, in that he tries to stop Gorilla Grodd and their oncoming army from taking over the city. And he kind of knows that it's coming, but he starts to put exercises in play to be able to get those premonitions. There is a great big huge double page splash where it kind of takes you down a choose your own adventure thing that happens with the Flash and his choices that he makes as he works through those premonitions that he's seeing. And you kind of get to follow the path in a couple different ways that even loop back and lead you back to the same path that you were already on. Really fun, really exciting approach to kind of like play with in the pages of the Flash and kind of take you on the same journey that Wally West is on. This is just a really fun book, right? It strikes a really great balance between the fun and the action without sacrificing either one of them at any particular time. Ryan North is doing his best work, in my opinion, right now in the pages of The Flash. So make sure you check this out if you're a Wally West fan. All right, let's talk In Your Skin number 3, written by Aditya Bidikar with artwork by Somnath Pal. This is becoming a harder and harder book to talk about because it is so weird. That's the best way I can put it. They are trying to play with things that I think are really effective in different mediums, particularly movies, where you can convey different things with certain visuals or just like tones and feelings. And it's really hard to convey those kind of things in books. So let's back up and talk about this. The series is about this woman who has an obsession with another Bollywood actress, and kind of like an unhealthy obsession, right? And they find ways to kind of swap bodies, but in a very horrific body horror type of way. And that seems like it should be easy to convey, but there's a lot of back and forth that's happening. Both of these individuals are damaged, and we spent an issue in issue number 2 dealing with that damage and really trying to get your head wrapped around it. But in issue 3, you find yourself getting interwoven between these two people so much that I personally have kind of lost, who it is that has had these terrible things happen to them, who is acting in each person's body. Are they both influencing each other at this point? It's becoming very muddy in regards to who it is that I'm following at any particular time. And on top of that, we're now dealing with even more body horror aspects that have yet to be explained, as people are kind of quite literally shedding their skin from their own bodies. But is this the person? Is this the act of body stealing? Really hard to follow for me. Maybe this will be explained later on. Maybe there's more to be conveyed through this book. It's, it's just hard. From a single issue experience, I'm not sure that this is effective because it's leaving me with more questions that I don't think need to be questioned at this point. But I'm open to be, had to have this revelatory experience where I'm like, oh, that's what that meant. And maybe that comes later on. For this issue, though, it left me a little bit more confused than I wanted. All right, we have the reintroduction of an older book, so let's go ahead and talk about Mind Management New and Improved, #1, written and drawn by Matt Kindt. So I'm a big Matt Kindt fan, but I have to admit, I have still, as of yet, not read the original Mind Management books. And I was a little bit afraid that I'm going to jump into this and I'm going to be completely lost and I'm not going to understand, what is going on, and I'm not going to have my bearings. Rest assured, you can go in blind and you're going to have a really, really good experience with this book. It sets the stage for everything that's going on. It kind of explains maybe not what happened previously, but it does enough to kind of get you into the groove of, okay, what is mind management? What are these superpowers that people have? What is the organization that people are working with? And what's the greater mystery that's being investigated? Everything's very clean right here in this book right now. So don't be afraid to dive in. So, what do we have here? A couple detectives that are investigating this murder that is interesting. They have all of the clues and all of the evidence to show that, well, nothing really happened at the scene of the crime. So, how do they investigate that and how do they see that? Well, mind management has people with particular abilities. And one of the abilities for one of these people is to be able to smell things and kind of perceive the reality of what happened and to see maybe the truth of the events that happened. He can, they talk about in the book, he can smell a fart and tell you not only what you had for breakfast, but how you were feeling that particular morning as you ate that breakfast. Kind of, juvenile humor there, but it sets the stage for what he can actually do. Now, through those powers, he actually is able to decipher more about this and they continue their investigation. It's not solved in one and done kind of thing here. We have more to figure out, but I got to say, it's really cool. Now, the artistic quality here, you have to be on board with Matt Kindt. And the best thing I can say is, like, if you've read any of his other work, you already know what you're getting into. But if you haven't, and maybe you're a fan of Jeff Lemire, very close artistic style to Jeff Lemire's, right? That's kind of, it's the best comparison I can make here. So if you can jive with that, if that's something that you dig, I think this book might be for you. Also, if I'm making a comparison point to something outside of mind management, I also read Fear Case from Matt Kindt a couple years ago, and that feels very much in the tone of this, albeit it's not as dreary and horror tinged. So check this out. I think this is maybe the most interesting book that I've read all week. Next up, we have The Peril of the Brutal Dark and Ezra Cain Mystery #5, written by Chris Condon with artwork by Jacob Phillips. This is the penultimate issue to the mini series that we've gotten so far, and I gotta say, it very much feels like that penultimate issue. This is the most action-packed issue that we've gotten so far, as mysteries have basically all been revealed at this point, and it's all on Ezra Cain's shoulders to be able to stop the nefarious forces from enacting what they want to do to control the world. And in through that, we have a very different issue than anything that we've gotten from the previous 4 issues. So Ezra Cain has kind of like unveiled the plans for the Germans to kind of take over not just the United States but the world, and they're going to be using this mythical anvil to start to enact that plan. They already have their mechanical army. They already know that they're working for, the German party right now. And it's kind of cool because we see all of this, 30s era kind of like iconography, the architecture, the blimp, right? There's a lot of things that evoke that time frame in a really great way, but it still kind of keeps that noir vibe and tone, even though it is more actiony. So Early on, I compared this book to an Indiana Jones movie, and I still feel that very same way. This issue is the time where, it's that action beat. It's like Indy fighting the dude, like putting him into the propeller of the plane kind of, scene, basically. That's what we're getting here as Ezra Cain is trying his best to stop these people, and he can't quite get there yet, but that's the reason why we call it penultimate as well. Chris Condon is weaving a really great story. I feel like it is right in the wheelhouse for this creative team. It's kind of like the tone and vibe that they do so freaking well. And this issue is another example of that. Peril of the Brutal Dark has continued to be one of my favorite comics that have come out so far this year. Kind of sad that it's only a mini series, but I'm hoping that they will be able to come back and tell another Ezra Cain mystery later on outside of this story. That is, if he survives issue number 6, though. Time will tell. All right, we just spoke about a penultimate issue. Let's talk about the finale with Racer X number 8, written by Mark Russell with artwork by Nuno Plati. So again, what I've said is that this is the series that has run on parallel tracks to Speed Racer, and I think in that way it has been extraordinarily successful in diving into the psyche and the understanding of Racer X. And this issue really takes that, it drives it home, right? It kind of delivers, I think, everything we needed from this series to be able to end it, but still continue his journey as Racer X in the pages of Speed Racer alone. And through that, man, I gotta say, it was really, really satisfying. This all focuses on a chance that Racer X has. Now, we know that he's basically had to hide his identity to save his family, right? He's trying to make sure that they are not put into danger by the Tiger Syndicate and all the people that are working for them, right? The crime syndicate that it kind of controls everything on the racetrack. And he has a chance. He can get his life back, but he has to do a couple things for these people. And he's really kind of like given this choice, can he be Rex again, but doing these terrible things, or does he need to remain Racer X to remain, I don't know, a good person? And it's that balancing act, it's that duality that he's toying with and dealing with throughout the entirety of this issue. And I won't give away exactly what happens here, but I can tell you that it is a really great character study for the person who is Racer X, and it gives really a nice look into what he's dealing with and how he perceives himself, his family, and maybe a new path forward. Really great stuff here. Nuno Plati's artwork has been fantastic in this series through and through. I think that he has definitely been able to deliver the emotional, heartfelt moments, as well as like the action-packed racing moments as well. And that takes a certain kind of artist to do that. Plati definitely did it here. Racer X, I think it ended on the best note that it could, and I think in that way, maybe it just wins the race. All right, let's talk Red Roots number 3, written and drawn by Lorenzo Di Felici. So, this has been a very, very weird series so far, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but I mean it in a weird way for sure. So, issue number 1, we're dealt with these two people on Earth dealing with two very vastly different problems, and those two people are then drawn into this weird mythological world, this underworld, if you will, where there is like an alien, barbarian, gladiatorial thing that's going on. In issue number 3, we start to deal with that a little more, but more weirdness kind of gets tossed on top of the weirdness that we've already gotten. And here's my issue right now is that I feel like we've been delivered question after question after question without getting answer after answer after answer for any one of these certain things. And it's kind of become more of a tiring exercise than it has been an enjoyable exercise for me. I'm interested in this world. It's like J.J. Abrams with Lost, right? It's almost like the mystery is the more entertaining aspect than the actual answers itself for them creating the book. But in that way, it becomes something that is less satisfying because you don't ever really know what is going on. I wanted to make sure I gave it 3 issues to really understand my feelings toward this series, and I just don't think that this is going to be the series for me. Now, maybe this is something I come back to as answers are delivered to see, okay, well, can I find new enjoyment from it at that time? Right here and right now, I'm just not getting it from the book, though. So we're going to have to take a couple issues off here and maybe come back to it and see how I feel later on. All right, let's talk Superman number 39, written by Joshua Williamson with artwork by Dan Mora. So Superman is still being heralded by the character of Superboy Prime. He's kind of the main character now that Clark Kent has gone missing after the events of DCKO. And what we've seen now is that The powers that Superboy Prime has, primarily his fourth wall breaking ability and kind of multiversal transportation abilities, I guess. I'm trying to think of a better way to say that. They're being manipulated a little bit by the character of Manchester Black. And they're being manipulated because Manchester Black is dead. And he now knows that Superboy Prime has been dead. So maybe there's a path to him coming back as well. The best thing about this book is how Dan Mora is able to kind of work within the artistic styles that they are traversing through this book. So Superboy Prime is basically punching his way through these different portions of the DC universe, right? When I mean portions, I kind of mean like he spends time on his universe, right? Well, I shouldn't say his universe, but DC Prime. And then he also spends time within like the Bruce Timm animated series universe. And then he kind of spends time in this dark, dreary, gritty kind of universe, right? And each time Dan Mora has to kind of like play within the artistic style of that universe that he is playing in. And he does it really, really well. On top of that, Joshua Williamson is able to kind of convey the right tone for each one of these universes while also staying true to Superboy Prime's voice that needs to be kind of like brought forth through this. All the while, too, Manchester Black is kind of speaking to him and walking him through this process and manipulating him, right? So there's like a hat on a hat on a hat that's happening here. It's really hard to juggle those kind of things, but Joshua Williamson, I think, is really doing that in a great way. Superman has sneakily been a really fun book that has made me a fan of a character that I didn't think I would be a fan of, too. That speaks volumes here. Superman is really, really entertaining. All right, let's talk The Twilight Zone number 8, written and drawn by Gabriel Hardman. So the last issue, I came back to The Twilight Zone because I wanted to give it another shot. I took a couple issues off, and I was really pleasantly surprised by my experience. And I have to say, this builds upon that in a great way. So this issue is written and drawn by Gabriel Hardman, like I had mentioned, and it's great to see that unified duty, right, between artistic style and the writing on here, and it melds together in a great way. Gabriel Hardman delivered the absolute best issue of the G.I. Joe silent issues that I think we've gotten so far, and it's great to see him kind of continue to succeed in that manner coming over here. Now, this issue kind of deals with an actor who is kind of like known for a cult movie, a cult classic, if you will, from the 50s era that isn't known for being great, right? But it's achieved that cult status, and he kind of hates it. He hated the director, he hated his co stars, and he truly believes that it actually ruined his career that he would have had. But through whatever means, the means of the Twilight Zone, he is kind of like transported back to the time when this movie was being filmed. Not into his old body, but as a person of his age at that time, being able to speak to the people and maybe influence the past. And through those actions, you can see that changes are now happening. And if it's the Twilight Zone, some of those changes aren't always good, some of them aren't always bad, but they're definitely always interesting. So the Twilight Zone aspect of this issue, I don't think is maybe as successful as other previous issues here, but I do like that we get that twist. I do like that we get that change that feels really true and natural to the Twilight Zone. And the art style on here is maybe my favorite approach to the book itself here. That's the most Twilight Zone feeling kind of thing that we have here. And I like the fact that we're also dealing with an older cult classic kind of movie, which kind of still fits and like feels almost like the Twilight Zone episodes that we would have gotten from that same time era. A really cool duality between those two things here. Twilight Zone has 2 issues now where it's really surprised me here. I think I'm going to be back for more. All right, with our next issue, let's talk Usagi Yojimbo Kaitō 84 number 4, written by Zach Rosenberg with artwork by Jared Cullum. So this issue is all about our characters who have now been thrust into the past, into the feudal Japan era that our original Usagi character is kind of known for inhabiting. And in this issue, it's kind of cool. This is a really big action set piece kind of issue, as we have our main character and Tomei, or the version of Tomei in this world, kind of working to get these mythological artifacts and kind of get back to their own time. And through this, they kind of have to go through these 3 trials and best these 3 beings in order to achieve what they're looking to get. So in that way, it's really cool because it's kind of just going through the paces of each one of these 3 things, but it's also drawing on very real kind of like myths from Japan, if you will. They kind of explain that in the back issue. That's actually one of the coolest things here. And by the way, if you're reading Usagi Yojimbo Kaitō, in the back, you always have this kind of like comic strip thing where the creators of the book are talking to you and kind of spelling out whatever it is that they want to do. That's a really cool aspect. More people should actually incorporate that. So kudos to the creative team here. But again, this is an action-packed issue as they go through those things. Jared Cullum's artwork really gets to shine here as he gets to get really playful with all of these things that are happening here. And again, I'm trying to be vague because I don't want to give away the events that actually happen in the book. But rest assured, they're going through these, they're getting these artifacts here. And with the character of Usagi, you know that he is going to be bouncing around every single corner of this page in order to achieve what they're trying to see happen here. Really fun, really exciting issue here, setting itself up for a conclusion here that leaves us on a cliffhanger on this last page here. So Usagi Yojimbo Kaitō 84, man, this is a really fun series here. Make sure you're checking this out. And with my runner-up book of the week, let's talk Is Ted Okay? Number 5, written and drawn by Dave Chisholm. Whew, this is a big issue, guys. If you're reading Is Ted Okay? It's been a series that has been building to this issue, to this point. And that is to say, we don't know what's been happening in this world. And we don't know what the company that Ted works for is actually up to. And the entrepreneur, right? The tech bro guy that like has kind of developed this company. What are his, motives? What is he trying to do? And who is Ted? What is Ted, right? We get answers to all of those things within this issue. And that feels like a lot of heavy lifting, but I have to say, within the pages of this book, it's all done clean and concisely, and it's paced out perfectly where none of this stuff feels like it's just like, throwing things against the wall. It is done in a way where I'm like, oh, that makes sense, but also it's satisfying, and also I don't think it's been explored yet in the pages of comic books, at least recently. I'm sure that there's some big wild books out there that I haven't read yet, but man, I gotta say, this feels like a book of its time and age that is going to be exploring things that we just don't get explored. And that is really, really cool. Now, Dave Chisholm on this is doing the artistic duties as well. And I have to say, I don't think that anyone except for him could draw this book. And I shouldn't even just say draw, because he's drawing, he's inking, he's coloring, he's doing everything in this book. And without him being the sole person taking on the duties of this book, I don't know if it would be as successful as it would otherwise. I feel like the uniqueness of his artistic quality is something that just gets to shine through here, and I love that for it. Now, the premise of this book is, again, it's kind of like building. This is another issue that is penultimate, right? So we're going to have our finale right after this. And I think that we are being set up for something that is going to be epic and exciting here. Now, knowing all these mysteries have been unveiled, I'd be willing to bet that Dave still has a card up his sleeve here to deliver us in issue number 6 here. Is Ted okay, though? Toys with so many things that just get me so freaking excited, not just for this comic, but for comics in general. This is proof positive that comics are a medium where you get to do things where you can't do them anywhere else. Is Ted okay? Is just the shining example of that, man, and I couldn't be more excited for this book. And with my top comic of the week, let's talk Escape number 8, written by Rick Remender with artwork by Daniel Acuna. Man, this is an issue that builds more tension than I really was expecting, because we just had such a tension-filled issue. Now, what's interesting, though, is that in our previous issue, we saw that Milton, our main character, had completed his mission, right? He had basically infiltrated. He's gone behind enemy lines. He's destroyed the mechanism that would have allowed the Bats to win this kind of war, right? Which is kind of a stand-in for World War II. But now he's kind of on death's door, or he was on death's door. He's beaten, battered, and bruised, and he's being held and nursed back to health by some of the Bats, right? But not the Bats that are working for the army that are against him, but some of them who are occupying that same place, but also are a rebellion to, what is a stand-in for the Germans in World War II. And through that, you get to see a lot of nuance. And it's like something that I think that Rick Remender is really great at, is kind of like developing and playing with these ideas and these viewpoints from a lot of different perspectives, and making you really think about where do you stand and what is right and what is wrong. It's something that he's explored in a lot of different books, most recently really effectively in The Sacrificers. And now we get to explore a little bit of those ideas through a different lens in Escape number 8. So Milton man, he's kind of put between a rock and a hard place. Is he here to complete, to kind of like do what is best for his country? Is he here to complete his mission? Is he here to actually help the people who are not aligned with what the bats are trying to do? And how does he accomplish all of those? And if he can't, what does he align with? That's what this issue is all playing with and toying with. And then in that way, it builds up that tension, but in a much different way than the previous issue, but in an equally effective way. Escape has kind of like been one of, again, another shining example of why Rick Remender is one of the absolute best voices in comics right now. And he can do so in a really incredible, sparse way, too. He doesn't need to like blow up a page with like a million words either. What he can do with 3 words is what some writers wish they could do with a page full of dialogue. Man, and this issue is kind of a shining example of that. When you throw Daniel Acuna's artwork on top of that, you're looking at a masterpiece, right? This is artistic duties and writing quality put together to create one of the absolute best comics of 2026 so far. All of these things put together make it absolutely worthy of Top Comic of the Week. This was an incredibly fun and exciting week full of comics here. Some of the absolute best that I think have come out in June came out in this last week right here. But when we're talking about best comics here, we go all the way back through time, right? And one of the best things that you can do is make sure that you read these stories here in ways that actually are affordable. I just hooked up with Nick over at Comic Culture and Stu from Dr. Doom's fan club over on Comic Culture's channel to go over some of the best Prime Day deals. Make sure to check out that video right here.